Hey everyone, welcome to today's Explainer. Have you ever, just stopped to really consider the hidden dynamics operating right beneath the surface of literally every single room you walk into? Well, today we're decoding the silent architect of power. It's a fascinating text that completely flips everything we've been taught about influence totally upside down. We're going to look at a dynamic that completely dismantles our preconceived notions about how volume equals victory. So get ready, because by the end of this explainer, you're going to look at your colleagues, your peers, and honestly, probably even yourself in an entirely new light. So I want you to take just a second and picture the very last meeting or social gathering you went to. Really picture it. The conference table, the lukewarm coffee cups, the people. Got it? Okay, now look around that mental room. Who was dominating the conversation? Who was desperately trying to hold the floor the whole time? And actually, more importantly, who was sitting back, saying absolutely nothing? Our source material poses this really profound thought experiment. Who is actually the most dangerous person in that room? And hey, by dangerous, we don't mean a physical threat, but rather a formidable force of influence. We're so conditioned to look straight at the center of attention, but true power, it's often sitting quietly on the periphery, just watching. Which brings us to Section 1, the illusion of weakness. Okay, let's dive right into this. Society practically trains us to equate presence with noise, right? And that leads to this massive misunderstanding. If you look at the assumption side here, the source points out that people totally mistake silence for weakness. They see calmness and they immediately project insecurity onto it. They see a lack of attention-seeking behavior and just assume it means a lack of ability. Basically, loud people falsely equate their own volume with competence. But now check out the reality side. The quietest person is often the absolute most formidable, because their silence is not an absence of thought, it is a highly active state of observation. I'll let that reality sink in for a second. It's not emptiness at all, it's data gathering.
Moving on to Section 2, the observer's advantage.
Now, what's really interesting here is, if the quiet person isn't just sitting there being weak or insecure, what exactly are they doing? Well, while everyone else is busy talking over each other, projecting and defending their egos, the quiet person has the observer's advantage. The source gives us this incredibly concrete, strategic playbook that happens entirely in their mind. Step 1, they notice patterns. While the loud folks are totally focused on whatever they're going to say next, the silent architect is watching the actual flow of the room. They see who defers to whom and where the real leverage actually sits. Step 2, they understand people. Just by listening, they map out the emotional and psychological landscape of literally everyone at the table. And step 3, they think before they move. There is absolutely zero impulsive reaction here. It's a deliberate, highly calculated process.
And that builds into Section 3, the quiet arsenal.
Armed with all those observations, the silent architect starts assembling this invisible toolkit, entirely behind the scenes, completely away from the spotlight. The text explicitly calls out 4 distinct internal strengths that loud people chronically, almost fatally ignore. First up, discipline. Think about the sheer restraint it takes to hold your tongue when everyone else is shouting. Second, emotional control. The quiet person just isn't easily provoked into showing their hand. Third, patience. They are entirely willing and actually prefer to play the long game. And fourth, strategy. Because they aren't caught up in all that noise, they can see the entire chessboard. These 4 traits, they act as a massive unseen advantage over noisy, impulsive behavior.
So the crucial point here is that extroverted, loud behavior is very often driven by this need for constant feedback. But the silent architect operates completely differently. As the text lays out, they don't need validation every 5 minutes. They don't feel this overwhelming compulsion to announce every single goal or intention to the whole room. They possess a purely internal locus of validation. They work in total absolute silence, allowing their efforts to privately compound right up until the results simply speak for themselves.
Let's look at Section 4, the sound of real power. So how does this silent machinery actually operate outside of just a single conference room? Like, how does it shape our world? Well, if you look closely, the text points out a really profound historical truth. History, business, and leadership are absolutely full of individuals who were chronically underestimated simply because they weren't the loudest voice in the room. Throughout time, the people moving the biggest, most consequential levers of power were often totally ignored by the masses. They were the ones analyzing the patterns, exercising patience, and executing their strategy, all while the loud voices just completely burned themselves out.
The text states simply, real power is rarely noisy. Did you feel the weight of that silence? I paused there deliberately to demonstrate exactly what the source text is conveying. When you strip away all the noise, the ego, and that desperate need for attention, what's left is this undeniable grounded strength. Noise is so often just a facade.
Silence, on the other hand, is the absolute foundation of genuine authority. And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate conclusion of our source material. Because they have observed, because they've gathered the data, and because they've exercised so much discipline and strategy, when the quiet person finally decides it is time to speak, their words carry an unmatched density. They aren't just adding to the noise, they're cutting right through it. The person saying the least is the one who ultimately commands the room, because everyone intuitively knows that their words are actually backed by deep observation and really careful thought. Which leaves us with this final, lingering thought to take away from today's explainer. If you're an introvert, I really hope this validates the incredible silent power you already possess. And if you're an extrovert, I hope this challenges you to pause, maybe take a breath, and look at the quietest person in your next meeting with a profound new respect. Because the silent architect is always building. And the only real question is, when they finally speak, will you be listening? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I will catch you next time.